Hey peddlers, today I'll be sharing how I rode enough kilometers to go halfway around the world within 1 year. So without further ado, let's get right into this video. In this video, I'll be sharing my 4 top tips to actually ride more kilometers in 2021. So stay tuned for that as well. After checking my Strava stats for 2020, I logged 23,000 kilometers for the whole year, 5,000 of those kilometers being outside and 18,000 of those kilometers being done indoors. Now it's quite understandable that I rode a lot indoors because I personally like to ride early in the morning, 6 o'clock, and also because I live in Toronto, Canada. So the season here is very short, and that's what I love about the trainer is that you can get your rides done very efficiently and whatever suits your schedule. But I personally would love to ride a lot more outside, so hopefully in the future I can go to a warmer destination. I want to share my top 4 tips how to ride more in 2021 and rack up those kilometers, because I do find if you implement these suggestions, these tips that I use to accomplish riding pretty much more than halfway around the world in 2020, I find that you'll be capable of riding a lot more hopefully in 2021. So here we go. Now the 4 principles that I implemented in my cycling are as follows: planning, timing, mental strength, and goal setting. The first principle is planning, and no great achievement has been accomplished without a thought out foundation to start off of. I often hear people say that Rome wasn't built in a day, so for me to accomplish my goals, I have plenty of time to do that, and that could be further from the truth. Many people use this quote to actually give themselves an excuse of why something might take them a long time to accomplish, which is fair within reason. Obviously, big goals are going to take a lot of time and effort to accomplish, but that doesn't diminish the fact that you're going to have to put a lot of effort, which if you follow the quote up with, they were laying bricks every hour, which means you'll have to put the work in planning and the execution, everything I'm going to talk about, in order to accomplish that big goal. You don't have all the time in the world thinking that magically just through pure hope that you're going to get to where you want to be if you don't have the proper foundation and roadmap to actually get there. Sitting down and actually planning your schedule and goals and figuring out how you're going to get there and working backwards is so important, because if you don't do that and you don't know what to do day to day, then you definitely will not know what to do week to week, and definitely you will not know what to do month to month. You'll quickly find out 6 months to a year later that you haven't accomplished anything or have improved, which is very sad, because that could have all been avoided with proper planning from the beginning. I also like to stress that in the planning phase, you can actually take the time to plan your routes, plan your workouts, plan your rides, plan your races that you want to tackle or fitness goals, plan what you want to do on the bike, what upgrades you need, all that nice stuff at the beginning of the season, so later on you don't have to worry about that stuff. I kind of think of that stuff as the back end when the season comes up, but obviously before the season or at the start of the season, that is the foundation. That is so important, knowing that if you have bad weather, that you have a decent indoor setup to go off of and train. That's super important. So it's basically just laying the foundation, laying the strong roots that are going to help you grow into this crazy strong tree when the season is upon you. Even though I'm 22, I wish when I was a younger cyclist I had someone that talked about planning, because I think a lot of the time where I wasted doing aimless things on the bike could have been avoided if someone talked about how important planning was, because then I would understand what I would need to do in order to get where I want in terms of cycling performance. Now the next principle is timing, but more specifically time management, because if you want to execute your goals or tasks, you have to put the time in. Now when you plan accordingly and understand your schedule thoroughly, you'll be able to allocate the required time for your rides and training, and rather than making excuses as to why you can't ride, you'll be putting your energy and time for when you can ride, and hopefully you'll yield a better use of your time. Now I can understand that a lot of people have a full-time job or a family to take care of, and I can totally understand that, but I've seen very busy people that have an 80-hour work week still put in the time on the bike, and that's because their schedule, they understand it very well. You know, they know it like the back of their hand, so they can really allocate the proper time and make sacrifices and move things around for them to actually get their ride done, which I think is super important. And especially if you're not that busy, then you could totally implement some of those strategies in order to help you get your rides done. I personally find that riding first thing in the morning works best for me. If I can crush one of the hardest things that I have planned for that day first thing in the morning, it really sets the tone for the remainder of the day, and I can crush whatever I have laying in front of me. And I think this is also important because a lot of group rides, races, charity rides, and also grand fondos are done first thing in the morning. So if you can prep your body and your body experiences what it's like to ride first thing in the morning, I think that's super important and should be really encouraged. So if you guys are capable of doing so, I would highly suggest first thing in the morning, get it out of the way rather than having it linger on the back of your head. But I can obviously understand if that's not possible. If you have responsibilities such as work or a family, then you have to figure out times that work for you, potentially after work or after dinner. You have to figure that out. And I'd like to be positive and think that whether your schedule is super busy or not, I think that everyone is capable of, if you really sit down and plan, that's why the planning phase is so important, that you can find the proper timing. And as long as you don't get distracted and let other things that are not important consume you, then you should totally be able to crush your rides if possible. Now, the third principle that I find so important, and I find that's often overlooked, is mental strength. Now, all these principles are building upon each other, and what I mean by mental strength is just, I like to implement it in the following way, is that when I wake up, there's nothing in that day that I'm gonna let come in between me and my goals, and one of those goals are riding. Like I said, I know there's things that will come in between, riding sometimes, because real life obviously has some complications. So you might think that you can do your ride, but something comes up in real life, which I totally understand. But you have to be able to adapt and pivot and say, okay, if I do this, then I might have to sacrifice maybe watching a movie later and actually getting on the bike and riding instead and watching while I ride, or waking up super early tomorrow morning. There's always a solution to a problem, and it might take some hard thinking. If you work on your planning skills and your time management skills, then when you have that mental strength that even though something doesn't go your way, then you can really pivot from that and still crush it, is so important. Because I find that personally in the past that, I had a ride plan and then I wouldn't do it and I'd feel bad, and then I feel like I wasted a whole day because I didn't ride, and then the next time I would ride, I'd feel very discouraged. I think it's really important when you build that mental fortitude and to have that mental strength, then you're like, you know what, okay, today didn't work out, I didn't ride, but tomorrow I'm gonna crush it. And maybe because I know how to plan and allocate proper time, I can maybe do a longer workout and sacrifice the following things. So I think that's really important. Being able to adapt on the fly and pivot is so important, because obviously life will come in between of riding. That's just something that's inevitable. Now, when we're talking about mental strength, I think focus is so important. Whether it's racing or riding or group rides or solo rides or workout, having the focus to just be present in the moment and to tackle whatever you have to tackle is so important, because I find it's very easy to get distracted. You go to do a workout and then you're like, I don't really feel like it, I'll just do a soft ride. Or you do a race and you miss a move and you're like, there's no point of chasing. I think it's so important to have that focus in you to say, you know what, I'm going to give this 100%, because if I leave this ride feeling like I didn't accomplish what I set out to do, then I'll feel like I let myself down. And that's the whole thing with cycling, is a lot of times, or just fitness in general, is that there's no one really holding you accountable. Even if you have a coach, they're not going to feel devastated because you didn't accomplish your goals. It's more so you have to look inwards and say, hey, you know what, I know I'm capable of doing this. I know I can absolutely crush it. So that's what I'm here to do, and I'm going to do it. That's why having this mental strength is so important, because at the end of the day, the only person that's going to push the bike and turn the pedals is you. The last principle I want to talk about is goal setting, and that's probably one of the biggest principles when it comes to actually staying motivated on the bike. Now, whether that's having fitness goals or race goals or riding goals, whatever goals you actually set are going to be so important to find purpose and motivation to continue riding. Now, you don't necessarily have to have goals. You can obviously ride for fun, but I find when you have a mix of things, you'll enjoy the bike a lot more, because even if you go on all the leisure rides, that'll get pretty boring, because you want to actually work, you want to feel a burn, and if you do too much training, you want to relax also. So I think a healthy mix is obviously encouraged, and I try to do that as well when I train. One of the biggest things I realize that I do is at the beginning of a season, I'll have a lot of motivation because I want to do really well in the upcoming season. So January, February, March, April, there's all this motivation, and obviously the season usually starts around May, June, July. When October, November rolls around, and December, just motivation drops off a lot because there's no racing. I don't want to ride indoors because I miss riding outside and just feel so crushing. So that's usually why I find that January is a good time to set goals, but hopefully that would change in the future when I do go somewhere warmer. So I hope I can do that. Now, one thing I want to touch up on that's kind of related is that if you have exterior factors or just factors in general that are going to make it harder for you to accomplish goals, you have to address that and figure out solutions, because like I said, I don't think there's any problem you can't find a solution or just a better outcome for. So for me, if I find that I lose motivation because of the weather getting cold, obviously in the future, I think it would be positive, either going away for a training camp somewhere warm. Obviously it's going to increase morale and obviously motivate me to ride more because I'm somewhere warm. So just, understanding what motivates you to accomplish your goals is so important, rather than just feeling like there's nothing you can do and that you're stuck. Now, these 4 principles really build upon each other. If you know how to plan accordingly, you'll be able to execute what you plan because you'll have proper time management. And even though the times will get tough and you'll feel really drained, you'll have that mental strength to continue forward and keep pushing, and all that will result in you accomplishing your goals. So all of this intertwines with one another. I don't think it's very linear. I think there will be times when you're doing time management, mental strength, then back to goals, and then reevaluating your goals based on your plans. Like, it just goes all over the place. But if you really do implement these 4 principles that I've laid out for you, I really do think you would ride a lot more, because it's really helped me. The most I've ever ridden before I've implemented these things in my cycling regimen was about 10,000 kilometers. So the fact that I doubled that and I did 23,000 kilometers in 2020 really speaks to the power of these principles, and they're all free if you really think about it. Yes, I understand that time is money, but other than that, all the benefits that you get for health and mental fortitude and all that stuff that cycling really helps and physical activity helps, I think it's all worthwhile. So the more you can ride, the better, I personally believe, and hopefully you do too. Whatever you have done for your max kilometers in a year, I want you to surpass that this year in 2021, and hopefully you use at least one of these principles in your cycling regimen in 2021. Please drop a like on this video if you learned something, and comment a cycling training video that you would like me to do in the future. And also, while you're at it, you can leave a comment on what tips or tricks you use to ride more. And that about wraps it up. If you haven't subscribed, I highly suggest it. More videos coming in the future, and until the next one, keep on pedaling.